Welcome back. I'm Felix, and I am reacting to 5 most disturbing car crash deaths of all time. I probably had to do some blurring on this one. Even though the main picture is not blurred out anything, I think it was a guy with the leg hanging out when I found the thumbnail. So we'll see. We'll see how disturbing the videos are. And this is the first time I'm watching it, so it'll be a genuine reaction. But if it seems too much, I may blur it just to be on the safe side. With my luck, it'll probably get flagged. Well, it's not like I'm making any money off of it, so. But still, I'd rather be safe than sorry. But I haven't reacted to, this is Untamed, is it ED at the end? But I haven't watched one of their videos in a while. So I figured I'd check one out and see what the carnage is. Alright, let's take a look and learn how not to drive. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Here we go.
Car crashes happen every day, but some accidents are so disturbing that they leave a lasting impact. These are not just simple crashes. They involve strange circumstances, horrific outcomes, and chilling details. In this video, we'll look at 5 of the most disturbing car crash deaths of all time. Real stories of lives lost in shocking and unforgettable ways. It was a quiet evening in November 2024 when a terrible crash happened on the RM12 motorway in La Manga, Spain. What should have been a routine drive turned into a disaster when a speedboat detached from a trailer and caused a deadly accident. 2 British men lost their lives and another was seriously injured. The incident began when a 32-foot speedboat, known as a narco lancha because of its use in smuggling, broke free from the vehicle towing it. These boats are built for high speeds, often with powerful engines to avoid detection at sea. This one, moving at about 120 kilometers per hour, suddenly detached, flew through the air, and crashed onto a Seat Leon carrying 3 British men. The driver and front seat passenger, aged 49 and 57, did not survive. The impact was too severe. The third passenger, a 54-year-old man sitting in the back, suffered critical injuries. Emergency responders quickly took him to Virgen de la Arixaca University Clinical Hospital in Murcia, where he remained in serious condition. The crash led to further destruction. The impact caused a chain reaction involving 6 other vehicles. Some cars were pushed off the road while others overturned or were heavily damaged. Rescue teams spent over 30 minutes freeing trapped victims. Witnesses described a chaotic scene: twisted metal, shattered glass, and debris scattered everywhere. Several other people were injured, including 2 women, aged 18 and 55, and 2 men, aged 19 and 29. They were taken to hospitals in Cartagena with varying injuries. The motorway was shut down for hours as authorities worked to clear the wreckage and investigate what had happened. Investigators quickly realized that the boat was not an ordinary vessel. It was a high-powered speedboat often linked to smuggling. Its large size and weight made it extremely dangerous once unrestrained. With 2 300-horsepower engines, it became a massive projectile when it broke loose. Authorities, including the police and civil guard, launched an immediate investigation. They found that the boat had been secured to a trailer towed by another vehicle in front of the victim's car. However, because it was not properly fastened, it came loose and veered across both lanes. The Seat Leon's driver had no time to react. The crash was unavoidable. The driver towing the boat fled before authorities arrived.
I bet they did.
Investigators believe this person may be linked to smuggling operations. Another passenger might have been in the vehicle, but this has not been confirmed. A search began to locate the driver, but so far no one has been found. One of the key pieces of evidence at the scene was a set of supermarket receipts recovered from the wreckage. Authorities are now reviewing security footage from nearby stores, hoping to identify the suspect. The victims were later identified as PD, 49, JW, 57, and IP, 54, all British nationals. Their car was packed with golf clubs, suggesting they were heading to the La Manga Golf and Tennis Resort, a well-known destination in the area. The British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office confirmed that they were assisting the victims' families and working with local authorities. Photos from the crash showed the speedboat still lying across the motorway surrounded by wrecked vehicles. The damage was severe, showing how destructive a loose object of that size could be. Authorities are now looking into possible criminal connections. The boat, identified as a Zodiac inflatable, had no visible registration numbers, making its origins suspicious.
It was a criminal.
Officials are working with the British Embassy to investigate further and determine how such a dangerous event occurred. Beyond the loss of life, the crash caused significant disruption. The RM-12, a major road connecting La Manga and Cartagena, was closed for several hours, causing traffic delays. Many questions remain. How was such a large and dangerous boat so poorly secured? Was this an accident, or was something more intentional involved? What other risks were present that night? The driver responsible for towing the boat is still missing, leaving a major gap in the investigation.
I don't think they're going to find that driver. If this was part of a criminal, if this was part of a criminal organization, they are pissed that their boat is out there. They can't go claim the boat. They're out that boat. And that driver, and if there was someone else in the truck, they're both gone. You're not going to find them. If by chance you find them, they're deceased. They've been taken care of by the organization. It's like, my guess is they were probably in a hurry, didn't secure it, and then it became loose. End result, they're gone. Because if I was running a criminal organization and I found out you lost a key piece of equipment, I'm just going to make you disappear. No one's going to be looking for you. And it's possible the two guys in the truck just ran for it too. They just like, oh, dude, we got to go. Like, we got to vanish, or we're going to be vanished. So, yeah, I don't think they're ever going to find the driver.
Authorities continue to search for answers, but for now, the families of the victims are left grieving a tragic loss. A single moment of carelessness, or something more deliberate, turned a simple evening drive into a catastrophe.
I think it was just carelessness.
The search for the truth continues, but for those affected, the consequences of that night will never fade. On December 15, 1995, a devastating accident took place near Castleindinas, a hill fort close to Newquay, Cornwall. It was 6:30 p.m. when a routine drive turned into a disaster that would change many lives. Mark Wade, a 31-year-old truck driver from Fradden, had been on the road since early morning, transporting a Caterpillar digger on a low-loader lorry. He was exhausted after a long workday and was heading back to his company's depot in St. Column. He had no idea that a small mistake would lead to tragedy. The digger's arm, which should have been securely fastened, was left loose. As Wade drove along a narrow B road, the unsecured arm swung into the opposite lane. At that moment, 4 cars were approaching from the other direction.
Oh, man.
The impact was catastrophic. The heavy digger arm crashed into the cars, ripping off their roofs and causing immediate destruction. 5 people lost their lives instantly. 3 men and 2 women, including a passenger. 3 others suffered severe injuries, including head trauma. The scene was horrific. Emergency services rushed in with 10 ambulance crews from towns like Newquay, Wadebridge, Penzance, and Bodmin working tirelessly to help the injured. Firefighters and police officers fought to control the chaotic scene. However, for 5 people, nothing could be done. The scale of the destruction left many first responders deeply affected, with some later needing psychological counseling. Authorities quickly began investigating how this accident had happened. It was discovered that the digger's arm should have been secured with a metal pin and chains.
That is the danger of driving those big rigs when you're exhausted. In the U.S., probably in the UK now too, that was in '95, they do have stricter laws and you can get in a lot of trouble. Some areas they enforce it like you wouldn't believe. It's like, you've been up for way too long, you need to pull over right now or we're coming for you.
These were available on the truck, but Wade had not used them. He believed the load was stable, unaware that he was handling it incorrectly. Further inquiries revealed that Wade had never received proper training on how to transport heavy machinery safely. His employers, Baisley Plant Hire and Chepstow Plant Hire, had failed to provide the necessary instruction. As a result, both companies were held responsible for negligence. They were fined a total of £500,000 for failing to ensure safety procedures were followed.
That should have been more.
Wade, however, was not given a prison sentence. Instead, he was sent to a psychiatric hospital after being diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, and depression. 2 psychiatric reports confirmed that he was mentally unwell due to the accident. Judge Graham Cottle described Wade as a hard-working man who never intended harm. A petition signed by over 1,000 people urged the court to show leniency, emphasizing that Wade was already suffering from the emotional burden of what had happened. The judge agreed, acknowledging that Wade would carry the weight of that night for the rest of his life. For the families of the victims, the pain of losing their loved ones was permanent.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, clearly he didn't mean it. It was an accident. But I wonder how many of them wanted justice in the sense they wanted him behind bars. I think part of me would be okay with the decision, but there would still be part of me that's like, no, put him behind bars. I think that one would be a tough one to be part of, because clearly it affected him that he got committed. You know, he didn't want anything like this to happen, and he's responsible for those lives being taken. Yeah, I know with trucks, you got to make sure your load is secure. So that's why I'm saying 95, they probably weren't strict, but now I know, at least over here, they're very strict about that stuff.
But they weren't the only ones struggling. Many first responders who arrived at the scene that night carried the emotional scars for years. One of them was Richard Bobeck, a firefighter from St. Columb Major Fire Station. Richard was one of the first on site, witnessing the devastating wreckage and the loss of young lives. The experience deeply affected him. Richard was known as a dedicated firefighter and a loving father to his 2 daughters, Selena and Anya. However, the trauma of that night overwhelmed him. 8 months later, unable to cope with what he had seen, Richard tragically passed away. At the time, awareness of PTSD was not as widespread, and Richard did not receive the mental health support he needed. His daughters later spoke about how their father's loss changed their lives forever. Selena shared emotional memories of him, recalling his kindness and the years they lost together. Years later, Richard's dedication was honored. His name was added to the National Fire Brigade Memorial in London, and a plaque was placed at St. Colum's Fire Station. Retired and current firefighters attended the ceremony, sharing stories of his humor and generosity. The Castle and Dinas crash remains one of Cornwall's darkest moments. The consequences extended beyond that night, affecting families, first responders, and even Mark Wade himself. The accident is a reminder of the devastating impact that one small mistake can have.
Yeah, you got to be careful, even if you're not doing, like the first one was an unsecured boat. This one was an unsecured load. It's just little things like that can change everything in an instant. Like me and my wife were behind a truck that had stuff blown off, and like, no, get in the other lane. And I told her, she was driving off, like, get in the other lane and slow down. We're not staying behind that truck. It's like, nope.
On June 11, 2023, a terrible accident struck the Hunter Valley region of New South Wales, Australia. What began as a joyful wedding celebration ended in an unimaginable tragedy. The night was filled with laughter and dancing as guests gathered at Wandon Valley Estate in Lovedale to celebrate the wedding of Mitchell Gaffney and Madeline Edsel. As the festivities came to an end, 35 guests boarded a charter bus to return to their hotel in Singleton, a 30-minute drive away. The bus, a 2009 Volvo B7R operated by Link Bus Lines, was expected to take them back safely. At around 11:30 p.m., disaster struck. As the bus neared a roundabout at the M15 Wine Country Drive interchange near Greta, the driver, 58-year-old Brett Button, lost control. The vehicle overturned in thick fog, rolling onto its side. The crash was devastating. 10 people lost their lives and 25 others were injured. Some were rushed to hospitals, while one critically injured passenger was airlifted to Sydney for urgent care. The victims were beloved members of the community. Among them were 22-year-old Kaya McBride and her mother Nadine McBride, 52. Others included 21-year-old Kane Simons, 29-year-old Zachary Bray, Angus Craig, Tori Cowburn, and Rebecca Mullen, as well as Darcy Bullman, 30, and Andrew and Lynon Scott, both in their 30s. Many were part of the Singleton Roosters Australian Rules Football Club. Their sudden loss left the community in deep grief.
He lost. My first thought is maybe he'll go back to that. Is how fast were they going in that roundabout? Because those buses are not meant to like take turns fast. If he was going way too fast, that would definitely cause it to tilt over and crash like that.
Authorities launched an immediate investigation. Button was arrested at the scene and taken to Cessnock Police Station. A drug test revealed he had taken tramadol, a strong prescription painkiller, in the past 24 hours. The dosage was higher than recommended, and the medication is known to cause drowsiness and impair judgment. Further inquiries uncovered that Button had suffered from chronic pain since the 1990s and had been using tramadol for decades. In 2022, a doctor diagnosed him with dependence on the medication, leading to his removal from a previous job. Despite this, he continued working as a driver. Investigators later confirmed that Button had been speeding when he approached the roundabout,
That's what I thought.
ignoring the poor visibility due to fog. His impaired state and reckless driving ultimately led to the crash. News of the crash spread quickly, leaving the nation in shock. Survivors not only faced physical injuries but also emotional trauma. Many later spoke in court about their terrifying experiences. One recalled being trapped under the wreckage, struggling to breathe. Another shared the heartbreak of losing a close friend that night. Button was initially charged with 10 counts of dangerous driving causing death and 1 count of negligent driving. As the investigation continued, prosecutors considered more serious charges. In January 2024, he was charged with manslaughter.
Good.
However, in a later plea deal, those charges were dropped, upsetting many victims' families. Instead, Button pleaded guilty to 10 counts of dangerous driving causing death, along with other related offenses. During the trial, it was revealed that he knowingly took more tramadol than prescribed before driving. He had even joked about the risks. In court, he admitted full responsibility for the tragedy. In September 2024, Button was sentenced to 32 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 24 years. While this provided some closure, many families felt the justice system had not gone far enough. The decision to drop the manslaughter charges left them frustrated, believing the full impact of the tragedy had not been recognized. In response to the tragedy, a fundraising campaign was launched to support the victims' families.
Yeah, he should got longer.
The Hunter Valley Bus Tragedy Fund, managed by Rotary, raised nearly $1.5 million to assist with medical expenses, funeral costs, and financial hardships. Donations poured in from across Australia, even from people who had never met the victims. As time passed, many questioned if the crash could have been prevented. Should Button have been allowed to drive despite his medical history?
He should not have been.
Could stricter monitoring of commercial drivers have made a difference? And were bus safety measures strong enough to prevent such a disaster? For the victims' families, these questions remain unanswered. They now face the painful reality of moving forward without their loved ones.
And is that a main artery? I don't know about how Australia's set up. Because if that's a road you constantly have to go down, that would be hard, especially in the beginning. You drive past, this is where my loved one died. And yeah, he should not have been driving. And I think the company should have been held liable too. Because a lot of those companies, they do well, at least in the U.S., they do drug tests. I don't know about in Australia.
As for Brett Button, he will spend decades in prison, carrying the weight of a decision that changed so many lives in an instant. It was February 13th, 2024, in Mesa, Arizona. Ray Longhi, a 67-year-old father, grandfather, and aviation enthusiast, was on his way to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport to pick up his wife. It was a simple drive, something he had done many times before. Ray had a deep love for airplanes, living near Falcon Field Airport, where he often watched aircraft take off and land. His family joked that he could recognize a plane just by its engine sound. But on this day, Ray would never make it to the airport. As he drove his red Lexus down Greenfield Road, A private jet was preparing for takeoff at Falcon Field. The jet, a high-end business aircraft, started down the runway, but something went terribly wrong. It couldn't lift off, lost control, and crashed straight into Ray's car. The impact was catastrophic. Ray lost his life instantly. The jet didn't stop. It skidded off the road and into an orchard where it burst into flames. Inside the aircraft were 4 passengers: Drew Kimball, 44, his 12-year-old son Graham Kimball, Spencer Lindahl, 43, and Rustin Randall, 48. Sadly, none of them survived. A teenage passenger managed to escape but suffered severe burns and was rushed to the hospital. Witnesses said the plane never left the ground. What should have been a routine takeoff turned into a disaster within seconds. Ray had been only blocks from his home when it happened, making it even harder for his family to comprehend. How could something like this happen so close to where he had spent?
Was that a private runway connected to the road? I was trying to see if they show the runway.
Watching planes come and go. Ray's passion for aviation went beyond watching planes. He worked in the industry, including time and sales, and even lived in Taiwan for 8 years. He knew everything about aircraft and loved sharing his knowledge. His daughter, Lorraine, remembered how he used to take her outside as a child to watch planes take off. They would stand together in their yard just minutes from Falcon Field, as he explained how each aircraft worked. Even with all his knowledge of planes, nothing could have prepared him for what happened that day. Lorraine was in disbelief. "When I heard there was an accident, I assumed it was a car crash," she said. "But when I found out a plane was involved, I couldn't believe it. My dad lived next to that airport for years. How could this happen?" For Ray's family, the loss felt unreal. He had spent so much of his life fascinated by aviation, yet in...
I want to see the runway, because you're talking about it never left the ground. It's like, I'm trying to visual in my head, or was it a makeshift runway?
And a plane crash took him away. But Ray wasn't just a man who loved airplanes. He was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. He enjoyed spending time with his wife, Ada, his children, and his 1-year-old grandson, Charles. Lorraine described him as larger than life, someone who was caring, adventurous, and always looking out for others. Just minutes before the crash, Ray had sent Lorraine a simple message. "Everything okay?" It was something he did often, a way to check in and show he cared. Looking back, Lorraine saw it as more than just a routine text. It was a reminder of his love. That final message became one of her last memories of him. Lorraine struggled to accept what had happened. "It's so unfair," she said, "but I know my dad wouldn't want us to stay stuck in sadness. He'd want us to keep going." As Ray's family tried to understand the tragedy, the National Transportation Safety Board launched an investigation into the crash. But waiting for answers was difficult. "My family and I need to know what happened," Lorraine said. "This shouldn't have happened." Ray had always been passionate about helping others. He supported Sunshine Acres Children's Home in Mesa, often donating during the holidays. In his memory, his family encouraged people to contribute to the charity if they wanted to honor him. For those who knew Ray, his passing was heartbreaking. He wasn't just someone who loved planes. He was a family man who brought joy to those around him. His absence left a deep void in the lives of his loved ones.
Keep wanting to go back to the investigation. See, this was 2023, 2024. Or was this one 2024? I lost track of the date. Well, I want to know what caused the plane to malfunction.
As the investigation continues, many questions remain.
Still continuing.
Could this accident have been prevented? Was it a mechanical issue, human error, or something else entirely? For Ray's family, these questions aren't just about finding out what went wrong. They are a painful reminder that he is gone. But despite the grief, Lorraine holds on to the memories of her father, the laughter, the love, and the moments they shared. Ray Longy's life was full of adventure and kindness. Though his story ended in tragedy, his impact will never be forgotten.
Now the last one.
On July 18, 1969, on Chappaquiddick Island, off Martha's Vineyard.
I thought the Kennedy. Yeah, that one was suspicious. This one's suspicious. Let's see what all they cover.
An event involving Senator Edward Ted Kennedy would leave lasting questions and alter his career forever. At 37, Ted Kennedy was a rising figure in American politics, the youngest of the Kennedy brothers. His brothers, President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert F. Kennedy, had both been tragically killed. In 1969, Ted was a key figure in the Senate, serving as the youngest Senate Majority Whip and being seen as a possible candidate for president in 1972. That day, Kennedy had been to a boat race near Martha's Vineyard. Afterward, he attended a gathering with friends and political figures, including 6 women who had worked on Robert Kennedy's presidential campaign. One of them was 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne, a political secretary with a bright future. Around 11 p.m., Kennedy left the party with Mary Jo, claiming he was giving her a ride back to her hotel. However, she had left behind her handbag and room key, casting doubt on his explanation. Around midnight, a police officer saw Kennedy's car speeding on an unpaved road near Chappaquiddick. As the car neared a small bridge, Kennedy lost control, and the car plunged into a tidal pond, landing upside down. Kennedy managed to escape, but said he couldn't reach Mary Jo, who was trapped inside. The water was cold, and the current was strong. Instead of getting immediate help, Kennedy walked back to the party, passing several houses. He told his cousin, Joseph Gargan, and his friend Paul Markham about the incident, but no one called the authorities. Kennedy then left and swam to Edgartown, where he was staying. He changed into dry clothes, which raised suspicions later on. Hotel staff reported seeing him walk.
Yeah, this is why everything was suspicious around this. Like, this is something happened.
Walking calmly around the hotel. The next morning, he seemed unaffected, even complaining about noise from a nearby party. It wasn't until mid-morning that he finally reported the accident. By that time, fishermen had already found the car, and divers recovered Mary Jo's body. The delayed response and Kennedy's actions raised many questions. Why didn't he get help right away? Could she have been saved if he had acted sooner? The investigation was brief. Kennedy gave a televised statement saying he was overwhelmed with panic and grief, which led him to leave the scene. But details of the night remained unclear. Later reports revealed Kennedy had told friends and family to stay quiet about the events. Many suspected his actions were more about protecting his political career than responding out of concern. Despite the unusual circumstances, no autopsy was performed on Mary Jo's body. There were rumors that she might have been pregnant, but there was no evidence to support this. John Farrar, the diver who recovered her body, suggested that she could have survived for hours inside an air pocket in the car. If Kennedy had sought help sooner, she might have been saved. In the days after the incident, Kennedy appeared deeply shaken. His friends described him as withdrawn, and his wife, Joan, suffered a miscarriage during this time. His father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., whose health was already declining, reportedly worsened after the scandal. Legally, Kennedy faced little consequence. He pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident and received a 2-month suspended sentence. Despite the controversy, Kennedy continued to serve in the Senate for decades and became a respected lawmaker, though the Chappaquiddick event severely impacted his reputation and dashed his presidential aspirations.
Yep.
Mary Jo Kopechne's story is often overshadowed by the political fallout. Her life ended under unclear circumstances, and the unanswered questions about that night remain. Could things have turned out differently if Kennedy had acted sooner? The Chappaquiddick incident remains one of the most debated events in American political history, leaving behind questions that continue to linger.
Kennedy's gone now, so he took that to his grave as to what really happened. But I do remember hearing about this. Now, I wasn't around in '69, but even in the 80s and 90s, they talked about this. And consistently, they said, yeah, something was up with that. And there's too much going on for there not to be some hanky-panky, some wrongdoing going on. It's just too much. And he came from a powerful family, so he was able to cover it up. That's basically what happened. That was interesting. I was thinking I may have to blur stuff because the thumbnail was showing something gruesome. But that's not the case here. Yeah, I'll leave a link for it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and everyone take care. Later.